distinguished participants and guests. It's a great honor for me to be invited to this conference today to speak about my grandfather, Professor Jan Cantacuzino, who unfortunately I never met as he passed away before I was born. It's tragic and ironic to think that while my grandfather devoted all his life and energy to curing people from deadly viruses, he died of pneumonia on Sunday, January 14th, 1934, having caught a bad cold while attending the funeral of Ion Duca, President of the Council of Ministers of Romania, 2 weeks before. As my father often spoke to me about the many aspects of my grandfather's life, and with the help of some documents I have, I am glad to share this information, which I have divided in 4 parts: his education, his career, his publication, and last but not least, his personality. As my grandfather had a very full career, was involved in many activities, functions, conferences, and as I cannot mention them all, I will concentrate on the major ones. Born in Bucharest on November 26, 1863, my grandfather arrived in Paris in 1879, where he did the most important part of his higher studies. He joined the prestigious Louis-Louis-le-Grand, where he passed his baccalaureate. He then went to the University of Arts, where in 1885 he got degrees in philosophy and in natural science. Finally, he integrated the Faculty of Medicine, where on July 12, 1894, he presented his thesis of doctorate, Recherche sur le mode de destruction du vibrion colérique dans l'organisme. Under the leadership of very talented professors, whose high moral values he always liked to refer to, my grandfather received a strong classical culture, which was to leave him with an indelible print. At the same time, from 1892 and for the years to follow, my grandfather worked in the Pasteur Institute with Pierre-Paul Émile Roux, a French physician, bacteriologist and immunologist, as well as with Ilya Mechnikov, a Russian zoologist and immunologist, Nobel Prize of Medicine in 1908. After a while, the latter appointed my grandfather as his assistant, which led to an even closer collaboration over the following 6 years. This was the time of great revolution that Pasteur's discovery would trigger in pathology and therapeutic, and my grandfather joined the Pasteurian group with fervent enthusiasm. During this period, he also spent much time in the biological laboratory of Roscoff in Brittany, which he thoroughly enjoyed as he was passionately interested in its marine biology developments. From this moment, and until he died in January 1934, my grandfather led a dual life between Romania and France. As his works started to give him a certain fame, this ensured him a quick and intensive career development in Romania, and as far as France was concerned, he went back every year for long stays in the Roscoff laboratory, where he brought many students from the Institute. Being in Paris at the same time allowed him to maintain a strong and close collaboration with the Pasteur Institute as well as with the French Society of Biology. Between 1894 and 1896, my grandfather was asked by the Faculty of Science of the University of Iași to hold the chair of animal morphology. In 1902, the Faculty of Medicine of Bucharest requested him to manage the chair of experimental pathology, where he taught till the end of his life. In 1906, with Professor Athanasiu, he created the Romanian Society of Biology in Bucharest, the first foreign affiliate of the French Society of Biology. He was also named delegate of the International Office of Public Hygiene, precursor of the WHO in Geneva, where today, in the Aula Magna Hall, there is still a bust of him given by the Romanian government. Between 1908 and 1910, he was appointed director of the Romanian Health Services. The Romanian Parliament, which, on his suggestion, prepared the reform of the sanitary law, voted the Legea Cantacuzino, which created the first regional hygiene and bacteriological laboratories, as well as anti-tuberculosis sanatoriums. In 1813, he was appointed corresponding member of the French Biology Society. During the Second Balkan War, when the Romanian army entered Bulgaria in July 1913, the troops were not vaccinated against cholera. In Vrața, a city located between the Danube and Sofia, several soldiers from an infantry regiment, part of the 1st Romanian Army Corps, caught the germ, and within 1 week, more than 2,000 soldiers were infected. The situation was critical, and the pandemic spread quickly to the rest of the First Corps. My grandfather was called in and asked to organize the fight against the epidemic. With his team, he immediately imposed very strict sanitary measures, anti-typhoid and anti-choleric vaccination, and the 50,000 soldiers, part of the 1st Army Corps, were saved. When the peace agreement with Bulgaria was signed on July 31st, 1913, and while the 4th Romanian Army Corps was regrouping on the Danube to return to Romania, it unfortunately experienced the same choleric epidemic. Once again, my grandfather took a similar approach to screen and vaccinate the 50,000 soldiers of the 4th Army Corps, and within 29 days, they were all able to go back home. The First World War started in August 1914, and until August 1916, Romania remained neutral. During this period, my grandfather, as head of all health services, reorganized those of the Romanian army. When Romania entered the war, after some initial victories in Transylvania against the Austro-Hungarian army, with the invasion of the German army in November 1916, the Romanian army had to retreat in extremely difficult conditions during the very harsh winter towards Moldavia, where the royal family and the government had relocated in Iași, and many soldiers contracted the exanthematic typhus, which progressively spread. My grandfather was appointed General Director of all military and civil health services with the rank of Colonel. From December 1916, he took all the necessary measures to fight the epidemic, which, after a peak in March 1917, finally ended in May in Moldavia. In July 1917, the Romanian army was freed from the epidemic thanks to the systematic measures taken, allowing it to reorganize and prepare for the victories of Maraști and Marașesti in July and August 1917. In September 1918, he left Romania for Marseille, where he collaborated with the Director of Health Services, who asked him to study several cases of flus and typhus. He set up a laboratory and managed the service of epidemiology in Hospital of Saint-Sébastien. He was appointed head of the Romanian Red Cross in France. In 1918, he was promoted as Commandeur de la Légion d'honneur, the most prestigious French honor, which was given to him by Auguste Félix Charles de Beaupoil, Comte de Saint-Aulaire, Minister of France to Romania from 1916 to 1920. My grandfather came back to Romania in 1920 when he started to think about fulfilling his dream of creating a national Romanian institute on the model of the Pasteur Institute. This was achieved on April 1st, 1921, and as the director of the Institute of Serum and Vaccine, my grandfather put all the energy and passion into it until he died. Today, as we celebrate a century of successful activities, we remember the vital role the Institute has played in scientific research and production of all types of vaccines, whether produced locally or internationally. To ensure a regular influx of students, the Institute was connected to the chair of experimental medicine of the Faculty of Bucharest, which had been headed by my grandfather since 1902. I had the privilege to visit the Institute twice, the last time on November 6, 2018, and once again, I would like to thank the senior management, several doctors and researchers of the Institute for their kind assistance in organizing a very interesting visit for me, which included my grandfather's grave in the crypt, his museum, different laboratories, the library, etc. On June 4th, 1920, my grandfather led the Romanian delegation, including Nicolae Titulescu, to Versailles, near Paris, for the signature of the Trianon Treaty, which brought about the creation of Great Romania, addition of Transylvania, Bukovina, part of the Banat, and Dobruja. In 1923, he created the French Institute of Higher Studies in Bucharest, which allowed internship recruitments, scholarship awards, as well as bringing in professors who gave conferences in the different universities of Romania. In 1924, my grandfather was appointed a member of the Health Council of la Société des Nations. In 1925, he also participated in the exhibition of Romanian art in the Pavillon du Jeu de Paume in Paris. In 1926, my grandfather started the tuberculosis vaccination for newborn babies in Romania. While he was traveling to Roscoff in July, passing through Switzerland, he had a terrible accident in the railway station of Brig, which nearly killed him. His two legs were badly broken, fortunately not amputated, but he had to stay in a hospital bed in Switzerland for 3 months and then in his home in Bucharest for another 9. In 1929, he became associate member of the French National Academy of Medicine, and in 1931, he was appointed Minister of Labor and Public Health in the government of Prime Minister Nicolas Jorga. He modernized the public health services, reformed the sanitary laws, and organized inter-Balkan medical conferences. He also became a member of the International Labour Organization, which is located in Geneva, Switzerland. In 1933, he was appointed member of the French Academy of Science in the section of Medicine and Surgery, and chaired the meeting of International Medical History in Bucharest. He was appointed Doctor Honoris Causa of the Universities of Lyon, 1922, Brussels, 1924, Montpellier, 1930, Athens, 1932, Bordeaux, 1934, and in 1933 was nominated for the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine. As my grandfather had a long and close relationship with Princess and then Queen Mary of Romania, I would like to mention some of the references she made about him in some chapters of the 3-tome of her memoir, Story of My Life. After my grandfather assisted Princess Marie with the delivery of her daughter, Princess Elizabeth, on October 11th, 1894, she wrote, and I quote, "We became afterwards close friends." In 1897, my grandfather, with 2 other doctors, was at the bedside of Crown Prince Ferdinand night and day, as he had contracted typhoid fever as well as a double pneumonia. In July 1913, Princess Marie was on the Bulgarian front with my grandfather and his team to fight the cholera epidemic that had hit the Romanian army. During the 1916 retreat of the Romanian army to Moldavia, with a terrible typhus epidemic, Queen Marie strongly advised that my grandfather be appointed General Director of all military and public health services. When this was finally enacted, Queen Marie worked alongside with him with extraordinary devotion to overcome the epidemic until the end of December 1918. Regarding my grandfather's numerous publications, more than 30 works in 61 publications in 4 languages, in Romanian and French, I would like to mention a few. Revista Științelor Medicale in 1905, Exanthematic typhus, Vaccination of tuberculosis in Romania, On the etiology of scarlet fever, Romanian Archive of Experimental Pathology and Microbiology, 1928, Specific Streptococcus scarlet fever, Role of the flea in the exanthematic typhus and time of incubation of the disease, 1919, Exanthematic typhus epidemic in Romania during the last war, 1920, Choleric pathogeny and anti-choleric vaccination, 1920. Speaking Romanian, modern Greek, French and German, my grandfather had a strong classical culture and was constantly eager to learn. Humanist, he loved les grands esprits of old centuries. Bibliophile, he was keen to own rare editions of books. Very open-minded to all forms of art, he organized and sponsored exhibitions, was supportive of young talents, and encouraged them. He was repulsed by all narrowness of taste, fashions, or doctrines. in music, painting, sculpture, and literature, he revered the classics and loved the new one. He was a scientist, an artist, a musician, an organizer, and a diplomat. Everything in his personality breathed of intelligence, strength, and joie de vivre. He was known to be generous without limits, hospitable, enthusiastic, and always ready to help. Throughout his life, my grandfather was a passionate friend of France, and he constantly aimed at building and consolidating close relations between Romania and France. I will end by saying that my grandfather had a universal mindset, and thanks to his sensitivity and vast knowledge, one could say he had the profile of the honnête homme, as per the definition given in France in the 17th century. When he passed away, a great number of tributes were made and condolences sent from Romania and France, amongst others from King Carol II of Romania, from his mother Queen Marie, who wrote, and I quote, "Weep with all the admirable collaborators, the dear Grand Master who left us." From former politician and historian Nicola Iorga, from Romanian academics, etc. Many books and articles were also written by the French medical press, the Pasteur Institute, the University of Paris, and he was featured twice on the front page of the Figaro, a well-known French daily newspaper. While humanity is currently going through a very tragic pandemic, which has created worldwide pain and chaos over the last year, I'm very confident that the Cantacuzino Institute has once again a major role to play in helping in the eradication of this virus. I'm also sure that the relevant Romanian authorities will give the Institute the necessary means to succeed in this endeavor in order to keep up with its scientific research and vaccine serum program for another 100 years. Finally, may I sincerely congratulate the Scientific Council, the senior management, doctors and researchers of the Cantacuzino Institute for carrying on their noble mission with the same spirit and passion given by my grandfather throughout his lifetime. I thank you all for sharing these memories with me, and I wish you every success in your conference.